Well, coming to this now, workers at Amplats are expected to return work, or rather to work tomorrow. But let's hear from the National Union of Mineworkers what they think about this. And thank you so much, for your time. I mean, I think at this point, there's been a lot of confusion. Mineworkers were not meant to go back. Then they were given permits to go back. Initially, when we had a conversation as well, a bit earlier on in this past couple of weeks, there seemed to be confusion as to who got, the right credible permits, who didn't. But what's the status right now in terms of mine workers going back to work?
Thank you very much. I think during the speech of the president, he said that there will be other sectors that will be allowed in a strictly basis control to resume operation under a controlled number of workforce. But we also met with the Minister of DMR, Mantachi, and when we were discussing about the limited number of workers that can go back to work, we agreed that first and foremost, preventive measures against the spread of the disease must be taken into account, meaning that any company which wanted to start with a limited number of workers, it must include stakeholders, that is inspectors from the DMR, labor, to show the measures that are put in place that be allowed the company to bring in workers. But in this regard, Impala has gone out of its way and called workers en masse without consultation with either the DMR inspectors of labor. It is very wrong. The virus is killing thousands and thousands of people around the world. Authorities must certify themselves about preventive measures. So in this regard, the Minister of the Police and the Minister of DMR should agree with terms of how workers will be returned to work, because this is very much important communication.
What's at stake here, Joseph, in as far as the mines reopening is concerned, given, the state that the mining sector was in even before the lockdown and the kind of losses that it has suffered? The argument from mining houses being that perhaps some operations need to start resuming if you are to save the sector at all after the lockdown.
Yes, we acknowledge the fact that the exportation of minerals to internationally brings hard currency into the country, since the country is facing junk status by the international rating agencies. It is important that operations should start. We agree to that. But what is important is to follow strictly the guidelines that government has put in place. Companies should not just make an earmark of calling workers to come and resume operations without talking to stakeholders and putting measures in place and agreed about it. Whenever we are satisfied with how the company is going to start, with how many people and how are they going to be treated in terms of sanitizing, in terms of social distance, in terms of screening, in terms of quarantine and all the stuff, we can talk with the company with the same voice to say, and when it is agreed by labor and Department of Labor to the inspectors, and then the general of the police must be informed that there's an agreement about this. So we are asking permission even from the police that people should come. We are worried also by ourselves that this can, of course, assist unemployment if we can continue with lockdown forever. Just here now, 16 million people in America have lost jobs, and we have to be proactive to prevent such catastrophic action in our country.
I mean, I know for a fact that as far as Noom is concerned, the well-being of your workers takes precedence. We had this conversation before where you were worried about, working conditions under this pandemic. Now that we know it's been reported that mine workers are expected to return to work, I mean, how are you assuring that your workers are safe? I mean, they're working underground. How do you ensure that social distancing is still maintained, at least the rate at even a possibility of contracting COVID-19 is minimized as much as possible? Those PPEs they do have at their disposal as they prepare to go back to work.
Thank you very much. We have foot soldiers at the ground. First and foremost, we have what is called health and safety structures. They are down there at the shaft and full times of health and safety. These are the people that should be engaged at a shaft level to make sure that they identify all the necessary things like your sanitizers and everything that can be able to prevent the virus to spread at the working place. So those people are foot soldiers for ourselves. But even if it is like that, consultation must be done at national level by the executive of the company so that we can alert our health and safety structure and the regional health and safety structures to be on the ground to monitor any move of recalling workers, that it should be in a safe manner.
All right, Joseph Montisetsi, the president of the National Union of Mine Workers, thank you for your time talking there about the call to reopen certain mining operations, the latest coming from Impala Platinum, and basically saying that they support a sort of staggered and phased reopening of some of the sectors, but the key issue being about safety of the workers there, particularly in this time of COVID-19. To this